Okay, well, welcome back to another episode of the AI Marketing Stacks podcast. And today I'm here with Liana Ling, who is an exceptional marketer, has an amazing history, has done so many cool things that, go visit her LinkedIn and you can go see all of her storied history. But what she does now is she's the CEO of AdSkills.com, which is basically Netflix meets Harvard of marketing. So tons of incredible video content around ads, around marketing, and it's all from people who are in the trenches actually doing the work, not people regurgitating regurgitations of regurgitations. And on top of that, there's an amazing active community with people who are helping each other. Um, so that's what she's up to. And she also has a lot of experience with AI. So not just the marketing component, which she's an expert in, but tons of expertise in AI, automations, technology, everything. So Liana, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to spend some time with you.
Amazing, amazing. So are we. So I'm going to ask you this question, which is, what are you working on now that has you most excited?
Okay, well, the thing that really is exciting to me is and I'm just wanted to frame this as I was actually doing this because all I was doing was trying to figure out ways to use AI to push all the buttons to kind of free us up for more thinking. But what it developed into is I started to go down this rabbit hole of how can I improve my ads by making testing and actually creativity more process driven, which I know sounds a bit weird. It's like, oh, I'm adding in more process to creativity. But I found that the more that I started to build in to our creative process, like just adding in frameworks and how can we, again, like make a process around how to be creative, we actually ended up getting more creative,
Hmm,
which in turn has improved the quality and the results of our ads.
hmm. Love that. I love that. I actually, that's actually something I've been thinking about quite a bit lately is that um, sort of the first wave of a lot of thinking around AI is exactly what you said, efficiencies, push button, eliminate work, make things easier, do things faster, which is true. That should be definitely be a component. But I think the other aspect that will kind of be the second wave of thinking is these tools are really powerful for unlocking and unleashing human creativity. Um, at least in the second iteration. And I think actually the quality of the ads, the quality of the content that we consume is actually going to go up quite a bit. And there'll be a whole bunch more content and it'll be of higher quality. So I like that. Um, okay, here's a question that I love, which is what is the most surprising thing you've learned recently in marketing? Something that surprised you.
Yeah. So something that's really surprised me, which I've also been testing, is a realization that, and I've been guilty of this too, that we're very addicted to the tactics, like to the how to's,
Hmm,
but that actually doesn't make people buy. So I'm a big believer in doing short video like reels and TikToks and things like that to get more visibility. And I used to do a lot of just how to's, like here's how to do this, here's how to do this, and I'd get hundreds of thousands of views on some of the videos, but it actually didn't do anything for my business.
hmm,
And what I learned is that I was doing the opposite. I need to stop doing purely education and all this how to stuff because people actually don't want to do that. And what you really have to focus on is, and I know this goes more to copywriting. I'm not a copywriter, so there's probably copywriters who can actually literally identify this framework,
hmm,
but it's really about almost like poking the bear. Like, what are some doubts? What are some fears? You can kind of like bubble to the surface and really talk about that more and just partially answer that hook, and then just kind of leave it open. Do not put any calls to action. Just have the copy just draw people towards you, and then they'll just be compelled to reach out and take action. So
hmm.
I've been trying really, really hard, especially recently, just to not go into the trap of like, here's how to do something, but to think a little bit more intentionally of like, how can I bring these types of issues, to the surface as a hook,
Hmm.
and then just kind of answer that with the setup and leave a little bit of an open loop at the end of it.
I'd actually love to ask you about when you think about hooks, because hooks are I'm a copywriter, and hooks are the most, like, it's not even 80/20. It's like the 90/10 of any
Mm-hmm.
great ad, any great VSL, any great, um, what, like, there's that David Ogilvy quote. It's like 80% of your advertising dollars are spent as soon as you write the headline, right? So
Yes.
whatever comes first, headline, lead, opening. So, when you think about hooks with your experience working with ad skills and all of your other experience, how do you think about hooks and coming up with something that is sticky?
Yeah. So the biggest mistake that people make is just only thinking of a hook that gets people to watch the whole video, gets people to stop. Yes, that's really important. You need to figure that out first. But a lot of people just stop there, because once you figure that out, then you get sucked into the whole game, right? Of going viral.
Mm.
And that, I mean, most of us are doing, I don't think there's many people who are only doing it for pleasure. Most of us are in this to build our business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I think about hooks now is, number one, figuring out, yes, how do I do a hook, or what do I write a hook so that it makes people continue to watch? Because that's the key thing, is I got to get people to watch at least 50-75% of the video. Once I do that, then I'm just testing the same thing over and over again to figure out how can I hit that, like, one piece of doubt, or that one thing that they won't even voice it to people. And I want them to look at the video and think, like, wow, like, she just articulated, like, what was in my head. And like, that I'm afraid to even say out loud. And I know that's, number one, going to get them to watch. But number two, now I'm pre-framing them, right, for the offer that they're going to see eventually.
How do you get to that thing of
Yeah.
something that's so deep within, like, something they don't even want to admit to themselves or haven't articulated to themselves? How do you find that?
Yeah. So that's a couple of different places, and I use AI for that a lot, because I'm very impatient. So I know you can go out and you can talk to 1,000 different people and things like that, but I use AI in two different ways. Actually, this is kind of cool. So number one, I'll use ChatGPT, or I use another software called Magi.co, which has less limitations, but I'll just use some type of generative AI just to ask it questions.
Mm.
Either have it extrapolate from what it knows of an avatar that I give it, or you could do things like ask it to go read Amazon reviews of certain books or something, like whatever information you can gather that has those qualitative about, like, data about your target market. But another thing I really love to do is, if you do have a survey, which I recommend everybody do, like, get a survey with demographics and with, qualitative responses, like, what was your life like before? What is it like now? Like, what are you afraid of? What are your goals? That kind of stuff. I actually upload it into ChatGPT, and I have a discussion with it
Mm.
about what I just said to you. And I'll ask it things like, what are those deepest, darkest fears that you can extrapolate from the data I just gave you? And then I'll ask it to write hooks for me. I'll even take stuff I wrote, and I'll show it to ChatGPT and ask it, how well does this resonate? How well does this compel somebody to take action based on the data I just gave you?
Mm.
And that's helped me a lot to tweak stuff, and I think to get there a lot further. And then the second thing I do is, it's not sexy, but I just try and brute force it. Like, I just keep trying. That's why I like short video, because you can do it and find out pretty quickly.
Right.
So I just pick one thing, like maybe it's imposter syndrome, or maybe it's like the fear of like, one of the things that we're focusing on right now is how to help people create a plan to replace your clients every 90 days. Because even if they don't leave you after 90 days, you're golden, right?
Mm.
So, really honing in on that fear, and what are all the different ways I can do it. And I just keep trying, like, over and over and over again, till I figure out what's that one, when did I really kind of get it right, and then put ads behind it once I figure it out.
I love it. What is the story behind ad skills? Like, the genesis of it, the idea behind it, the gap that it fills in the market. Tell me a little more.
Yeah. So, I think it was really about, and, I'm actually not the original founder. That was Justin Brook and Shauna Brook. And I recently took it over in November. But, I think what ad skills is it's the intersection of knowledge and community. Because I don't know what you're finding, but I think with AI, information in and of itself is getting less and less valuable,
Yep.
because it's just out there and anybody can consume it. You can put a book in there and it's going to give you all the action items you need. So people don't need more information, right? What they need is they need sort of the nuances that happen when you're trying to implement it. So ad skills has actually people who are at the top of their game and actually in the trenches, like you said, doing the work. Because I find that's where you learn the most is in actually doing it, because you can read all you want. When you actually put up an ad and you get, things go wrong, there isn't going to be an information or a book that's going to help you. It's just like talking to other people about what's happening in the moment and kind of brainstorming with them. And so we provide that actually in our community. So their community has wide range of people from beginners all the way up to people who are like managing, millions and millions of dollars in ad spend, every month. And we're all in there together, kind of like I said, in the trenches, figuring out stuff. And what we really focus on is, as I always tell people, like we're here, we open up, we're transparent in terms of opening up. This is what the pros do. When we share something that works, I'm not telling you 3/4 of it and and kind of holding back the rest of it. It's like it's literally everything from their perspective of when you're a pro, this is how to do it. So you can learn, at a high level.
Okay. I have tons of questions that are generating, and I'm impatient, so I'm going to ask two questions at once.
Go for it.
Which is one, how do you attract and retain top talent or an expertise from people who are in the trenches to stay in your community? And then on top of that is, what do you feel like you do differently to build community, right? Because there's a lot of obvious things, but what do you guys do differently to really build a thriving community?
Yeah. I think it's about always going back to some of the basics. And one of the basics in marketing is understanding who you're serving and who you're marketing. And so one of the things I always like to do is when I'm talking with somebody who is, absolutely the top of their game, I want to find out what they really, really need and what they want. And a lot of people who are at the top of their game, yes, they're very busy. But one of the things they actually like to do is they want to actually feel that they can contribute and that they can give back. And, if you talk to some of the people who have been in our community for a while, they all talk about how at one point, something in ad skills helped them break through. Like it was a connection, or if it was like some little golden nugget that, got them to where they are today. And they're like, we just want to pay it forward. This is what happened to us. We want to pay it forward. Or, if they weren't in our community for that long, they just said, I just really want to help people. And so I think a lot of us don't think that all the time, that there's this contribution part that a lot of people want to do. And so we provide that. But then also once they're in there, it's definitely not like everybody's fangirling or fanboying over people. It's not kind of like that type of community. Like we're pretty cool, if you come in, so, and so I think because of that, we have some people in there that are, either affiliated with or work with some like really, really big brands and names that we would all recognize. But they're just they can just like kind of go about their business. There's no paparazzi and stuff like that hounding them and things like that. And so I think that's what it is. And I really try hard to figure out what it is that they need, what is it they want, and how can we serve them in that way too. And that's why they stay. In terms of like just how we're developing the community, I think it just comes back to being authentic. And one of the values that we have is I have something called the rules of the road, but and the L in rules of the road stands for love. And it sounds, airy fairy, but we genuinely care for our members and we want to treat them like VIPs. And so that it permeates through everything that we do. So we have a community that's authentic and that I think really shows that we really care about each other, and we create the safe community, and it's very engaging, and it's just authentic and real. And that's the feedback that I get from people as well. And if that's unique in this world now, which is kind of sad, right? But I think it's hard pressed to find that. I love that somebody said to me, "This is the most non-internet marketing community that I've ever seen," and I was so proud when he said that, because I just want people to feel like they're part of a family, and and that we're just here having high level, and sometimes we go way deep in the tactics just to help somebody out, and we're just solving problems and growing together.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and to the point of someone who mentioned earlier, is like if you think about the whole thing of like, all right, let's skate to where the puck is going. Information is becoming commoditized. Coaching to a degree is becoming commoditized because you can set up chatbots, you can do whatever. The thing that I think the next battleground is going to be in personality. So branding, influencers, personality is still going to be very important, more important. And then on top of that, sorry for the background noises. I should I should have a podcast studio, but I like the outside. Um, the other way it's going to be one, I think, is and like you said, community. So who creates authentic community, who creates authentic culture. And I'm with you. I think actually having love as one of the core values and understanding that and doing business from a place of service, I think those businesses are the ones that are going to last, right? And freeing up, it's like, when you free up human capital from doing administrative tasks or logistical tasks, you free up space for humans to focus more on creating connection and having community, which is really
Yes.
cool. Because a lot of the conversation that you see around AI is it's pretty brutal, right? A lot of it is replace your humans, replace your people, replace your people. And I think the next thing is, all right, how can we use these tools to empower people to be able to create more connection, more community? And I actually think people with amazing interpersonal skills and amazing connectors will actually thrive quite a bit. I actually think working on your interpersonal skills is something that is super, super important for where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think it also helps free us up to think more strategically, be more creative, which, if we're going to be honest, some people don't want that. Some people are very happy pressing the buttons, right? And I think this is really going to separate those people who are doing that, because they're the ones who are going to lose their jobs if they don't, pivot. But the ones who really want to dive into this, yeah, it's freeing us up and our team just to go to the next level, which can sometimes be, more challenging. But I mean, I love those types of challenges. So
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. Okay, so how let's talk a little more about AI. How do you use or how are you using AI in your business or in your personal life? And specifically, what tools have you used that you find most helpful?
sure. So I think that, just in general, for people to understand, I really focus on problem solving, because probably as we're talking, there's been what, like maybe 100 new tools that got launched, right? They're just everywhere nowadays,
Yes.
right? So it's impossible to stay up to date and literally play with everything. So what I do in my personal life and in business is I'm trying to look for problems and then thinking, how can AI solve the golden triangle for those problems? The golden triangle being, better, faster, cheaper. Because I find that with AI, that's what it's really solving for literally almost everything. It makes it better, faster, cheaper, which then, again, frees us up to do, more higher quality things. So that's where I come from, is as I like, what's a problem? Can we solve it with AI or automation? Like what can we do here to improve the situation? And that's where I found it much more like easier and less overwhelmed because of just all the stuff out there. I do have a bucket that I just play with for fun,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the time I'm just playing. Now it's stuff that I use every day. I think like many of us, we use some type of copy generative AI. I tend to use the paid version of ChatGPT, and I also use this other software called magi.co because it has access to a couple of the different models like Claude and ChatGPT 4 and some other ones like Llama, I think. Like he's got a whole bunch of them in there. And also doesn't have the same restrictions that you have with ChatGPT 4 in terms of the number of messages. So
Yes.
it's just helpful because I've been working on stuff and then you get hit with that. You're like, no more messages. You're like, oh, right. You're right in the middle
Yep.
of something. So I like to have a couple of different things there. So that's one thing I'm using. Another thing that helps me in my business and personal life is an AI called Reclaim. And what it does is it allows me to set up tasks and meetings and tell it how important are those. Like basically defends my time slots.
Hmm.
So if I say, okay, I need to work, I just need, like an hour every day or something to work strategically on ad skills. And I might tell it that's like my number one thing. So defend that with everything that you have. So if somebody comes along and is looking for a meeting, it will actually look through my calendar. It will look at the different priorities and then it'll move it around. And if it shifts one of the to-dos, then it will move it out for me because I find that I have to work for my schedule, like my calendar. And so I've been way more productive and I've just been able to manage everything by having it like just manage my stuff. I just tell it what I want to do. and it just plots it all out for me. So then I've got meetings or like podcasts, and then I also have, like I said, time when I just need to do my stuff in there, whether it's exercise or playtime or, like strategic thinking, all that kind of stuff. And then the third thing that I've been playing around with is a bunch of different AIs to help me create video. So like using like stuff like HeyGen, where, it's kind of fun to play it and get like a AI spokesperson, or InVideo's AI, where it's just writing a VSL from scratch and like creating it for you with all the B-roll, which is amazing. It just saves so much time. Those are still more like in the play category right now. But it's been a lot of fun to kind of play with that and just to help us, because it takes the pressure off of me to keep creating all the content all the time, right? And
Yeah.
probably people get bored of seeing me, so it's kind of fun to create a cartoon character or something, to start talking.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And then one of the newest ones, I just like literally I found about it today and I was playing around with it. It's called Moon Valley
Okay.
AI. It's like a runway, so it's a text to video, but it's really really high quality,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on Discord like a Mid Journey. So that's definitely
Nice.
definitely another one to put in your toolbox to play around
Yeah,
with.
for sure. For sure. Like I have blank page syndrome. So I don't know about you when you're writing,
Mm,
but I just can't. So even if it sucks, it's just helpful to have something
to
to
start
edit,
with
right?
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, so when you're doing your play and your experiment, what's something that you've done with AI, either a prompt or a question that you feel like nobody else has done, but you got a
Mhm.
lot of joy or excitement or value from it?
Yeah. So maybe this sounds a little bit morbid, but I was in a mastermind and we were talking about how much time you probably have to live and measuring it against your goals. And so
Mm,
what I did was I went into ChatGPT in the code section, and I told it how many more years I wanted to plan for and what my goals were, and asked it to create a Gantt chart to plan it all out in terms of like reaching all of it. And it did. Like it created this like whole chart, and so like how many years you have to do this and all the goals. And I just thought it was really cool because it's just there. You can kind of see it, and it's like a chart. And I found that was really, I
I
thought that
love
was really neat. And
it.
I hadn't heard anybody else doing that. So
I love that. The Gantt chart of death.
yes, pretty
Yes,
much. Yep.
that's super interesting.
Because when you
Yeah,
think about it, right? Like even if you have like 50 years left or whatever, or like even if you have like 75 years to go, like really, how are you going to make the most out of it?
yep.
Right. And what do you want to accomplish? And so you can just have it all just out there as just like I think of like a high level overview of what you need to do for each decade.
No, it's super powerful. Yeah, one thing I've been using too recently is like I've been having Chat GPT just come up with like theories for me, right? Just like
Mm-hmm.
making theories up. So I'm like, all right, like I want to create a universal theory of like ad creatives or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
um, thinking from first principles and coming up with frameworks. And I don't know, that to me has been very, very helpful. Like, one thing that I want to play around with, I mentioned this on the other podcast, is like, thinking about a copy from like a neurochemical perspective, right? So
Yeah.
every time that I say something to you, it's releasing, a dopamine or a serotonin or an oxytocin or something like that. And so thinking about copy as sort of like this symphony of these hormones that you're creating in somebody else's or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
seeing if that gives you anything interesting. Um, so I love it. I love like ultra creative, just weird shit that people can put into
Yeah.
AI.
Another thing you might want to try is I created a chat where I told it to not give me any answers. Like I told it to ask me a question to force me to come up with the answer. So
Mm,
almost like a life coach type of thing, but not.
mm,
And sometimes it's really frustrating, but I've had some big breakthroughs just from that. Because you say it like, oh, like I want to do this. And then it just keeps asking me questions. And it's so annoying because it will stick to it, right? Not like a human. Um,
interesting.
so
Interesting. I actually love that. I'm gonna try that.
yeah.
Are there any prompts that you've used that you thought were really, really smart?
The smartest thing I actually did was throw out my library prompts.
Hmm.
So I I mean, yes, I have some that I would get started with, but as soon as I started treating it like a person, Like we don't carry around a dictionary of how we instruct our assistants or our team members, right? And so I was like, why do we do that with this? So I treat it more just like a person,
Mm.
because I was like, oh, I got to look up this prompt or whatever. I just think about what I want and I just say it to it. Like, I know you have to follow the formula, like give it a role and then tell it what you want. But if it doesn't give me what I want, I'll actually talk to it like I would a person beside me. This isn't really what I expected. I kind of wanted this.
Yep.
And if it really doesn't give it to me, I'll say, well, okay, wait a minute. I'll go to another chat that maybe is like, I tell it it's a prompt creator, and I'll say, like, I'm trying to do this. It's not giving me this. What's the best way for me to, instruct it, or give me a different framework to do that in?
Yep.
And I've just been more productive that way, instead of like trying to go back and forth between looking up a prompt and putting that in there. To me, it's just much more organic this way.
And you're practicing the skill of interacting with it, so you know how to get
Mhm.
better outputs, and
Yes.
that's a powerful skill to have too.
Just like with your team member,
Yeah,
right? It's
100%.
just, yeah.
100%. Um, the other thing too that you mentioned, what was the other? It wasn't chat.
Oh, the
The Magi,
magi.co.
the
Yeah.
Magi.co. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I use one called Poe.com, which I think
Oh, yeah. I've heard of it.
sounds similar. And I like to use those. And just for anyone listening, the reason I like to use those is, yes, the token window is better. A lot of times you get access to these models that you can't get access to otherwise. Um, but then also when you access these models through the API versus through the chat interface, you tend to get like less restrictive answers, right? It tends to be a little
Yes.
more straightforward because the chat has all these filters to make it a friendly experience, which are
Yes.
amazing, and I still love it. But when you access the API, you're getting you know, the raw, real stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I think that's not what people don't really realize is when you use things like 11 Labs or ChatGPT, like it's working from a base, right? And we're just adding stuff on top of it. Whereas if
Yes.
you get it with the API, just get the raw stuff, then yeah, you can do a lot more with it.
Love it. So, what's one thing that you recommend everyone try with an AI tool?
Yeah. I recommend that everybody just play. Like just play with it. To go in, don't expect it to do anything useful at all. Just go in and just have fun with it a little bit, and that's how you can get better at it. And how I usually advise people just to get started is just go to Bing, go into the chat. It's free, right? And they have image generation and they've got the text in there, and just think of something that really annoys you and ask it to help you solve that, just to
Nice.
see what happens,
Yep.
right? Just to see what happens. You can just start talking to it. But I think the problem is people expect it to be a miracle worker or something as soon as they jump in. And I said, don't expect it to do anything. Like just play with it like it's a kid or something, just to see what it's like.
Yep.
And then you'll figure it out. Like then it becomes, I think, more useful that way.
Yeah. No, I love that. I want to circle back and ask you a couple quick questions about um, ads and advertising, right? So
Sure.
this is October 2023. Ad landscape is changing always and probably changing faster than ever. So what do
Mhm.
you see, what do you see that's working? What do you see sort of the top pros? What are they up to? How are they thinking about advertising? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, give me a little, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, so it's definitely changing a lot. One of the trends that I'm seeing more and more and more, especially with Google and Meta or Facebook, is and I know people are annoyed about this, but they're trying to force people to remove restraints. So I was speaking with one of their data scientists a couple of weeks ago, and how he was explaining it to me was they want to actually remove as many restraints as possible to allow the algorithm to do its best work. So they want to remove the restraints of budget, of targeting, of location and all that stuff. But what they're actually doing is, because they want to remove all that, they're actually allowing us to target with the creatives, which is the copy and the images or the videos. So I think that's a good thing, because to me, that's actually more powerful and it gives me more control, rather than putting in some interest that you have zero idea how they came up with that. Right.
mm-hmm.
And I've been talking to a friend of mine who's been doing a lot on YouTube as well. And he's been finding that as well, like just leading with video that people actually like to watch all the way through. When he optimizes for that, their conversion rates go up as well. So it's just putting a much heavier emphasis on the creative in all of your ads is I think is actually going to make it much better. And as always, I'm always looking for, I may not agree with it, but I'm always looking for what they're promoting as a new feature. And whenever they say this is a new feature, then just use it,
Yeah.
because they're going to favor you in some way, but there's probably going to be something in there that'll just give you that little extra edge that you can go for it. So do that. And then just again, in keeping with the creative side of things, I really push people like just to test so much more than you think you're testing. And I don't mean necessarily like just throw in 1,000 new creatives. It's about how you're iterating. So yes, we can change a color or we can change a headline, but that actually doesn't really move the needle that much because we're using creative to target. If you get stuck in a rut, if you're like stuck in some plateau, you have to tell the platform, hey, like I want you to go over here. And the only way you can do it is like visually or with the copy. So that's where AI comes in, because sometimes I think we're just too stuck, and even in our teams, we're too stuck in thinking the same way. We need to break out of that pattern. So if you were like, a really obvious example is like if you were marketing a product to dogs and you have dogs in your ads, what's one way you can break out and start showing cats in all of your ads? Because that would definitely send a signal that you got to go into another, area of the audience. And so just really kind of going for it that way and just trying to remove your emotion, saying like, no, I like some stuff I put out there, I cringe, right? I'm like, no, but then I test it anyway. And what happens? It works.
Yep.
So I'm like, so what do I know? Right.
Yeah.
So instead I just really try and see like, how can I think more, like not just a little bit out of the box, like out of the box can be like a dot out of the box. I want to go like into the next universe, right?
Mm.
How do we do that? So it's not, yes, some people are like doing this with just pumping out volume, but I know I'm not into the pray and spray. Like I don't have time for that. So I'd rather do it more intentionally. What can you do? Like I said, in the copy, when now with ChatGPT, we can access all the brilliant minds in marketing and copywriting. I use all those frameworks. I'll like test all of them because one of them is going to hit.
Yep.
And just, yeah, and I just follow all these different frameworks and I just mix them all up together. So I'm constantly getting like a brand new approach and to try and keep things fresh.
And when you think about, I love that answer, by the way. When you think about um like testing for ads, do you have a hierarchy in your mind of what are the highest leverage things to test? Am I testing the framework? Am I testing the hook? Am I testing the image? And do you have an order of operations of where you see the highest leverage points?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I like to think of unlocking micro steps just from the
Mm.
top down.
Okay.
So the first thing you want to do is like, you want people to stop and read your ad. So it doesn't matter how good your landing page is. If they're not even stopping, you have no hope anyway. So that's the order that I go in, is I think, what's the next level thing I need them to do? I need them to stop. Then I need them to actually ingest and consume the ad. Then I need them to take an action. And then once they've taken an action, then we have to figure out, were they qualified enough? Okay, maybe not. What do we have to do to fix that? So depending on where you're at will depend on what you want to change. So for example, the first thing is you want them to stop. Well, most of the things that's going to make them stop is the image or the video, because that's the first thing you see. So I'm going to optimize for that first. The next thing is once you optimize and have something that they will actually consume, are they actually clicking through? So that's usually the headline, just like you said, David Ogilvy said, I mean, it's probably 90% now, right? In terms of
Mm-hmm.
headline. That's usually the headline. Or, I spend a lot of time in Facebook ads. So that's usually the first 3 sentences as well at the top of the ad.
Right.
So kind of do that. And then once they click through, like, are they taking the action you want? Maybe it's the whole, maybe your ad is getting a lot of click-throughs, but it's not congruent to the landing page, or you don't have that right hook that's pulling out, that one emotion, that one visceral feeling you want them to feel, or that one pain point that's actually not getting them to take the action you want. So maybe you have to change that. So that's how I kind of approach it. Just like, that's the next step. And then once your ad is working well, like maybe it's the landing page, maybe it's the speed of the page, maybe the images and the videos on the page aren't congruent with the ad, or maybe it's the offer. Totally, right? Like if all that stuff works, maybe you have to kind of then test the offer next.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I love that. So where can people find more about you or more about what you're up to?
Sure. So you can go to adskills.com. I'm in the community there, by the way, every single day, multiple times. I literally live in Slack. So if you
Mm.
really want to find me and meet me there, that's where I am. You can also find me on social media, like on Instagram. I am the lead gen queen. So if you pretty much look up lead gen queen, you should find me.
Awesome. Love it. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I selfishly asked you a lot of questions that were helpful for me. And I think they'll also be very helpful for everyone listening. So thank you for your time and yeah, all of your brilliance. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Awesome.